Welcome to In the News for September the 9th, 2022. I am Brett Burney from appsandlaw.com.
And this is Jeff Richardson at iPhone JD. Hey, Brett.
Hello, Jeff. So we are actually recording this just a little bit earlier because we wanted to have a special edition here covering all of the wowness that we just experienced on September the 7th. This was on Wednesday when Apple had their when Apple had their special event. All kinds of stuff. I don't even know really where to start. Although I will say we're going to cover three main things, and which is pretty much what the event covered, Jeff. Right? We're going to talk about the new iPhone. We're going to talk about the updated Apple Watches and the new Apple Watch, and then we'll talk about AirPods Pro. I mean, so much that's going on in here. I overall thought it was a masterful presentation, as it usually is. Very exciting. It was an hour and a half, and they actually did. I think they went through everything, and maybe the opposite. The method, the way we're going to do it, they ended with the iPhone, but let's start with the iPhone, Jeff. Your thoughts, because you already, prolific as you are, my friend, wrote up why lawyers and frankly any professionals will love the iPhone 14 Pro and the iPhone 14.
Yeah.
Yippee.
It is exciting. It's going to be great. And, there were lots of surprises in the announcement, some things that we expected, but many things we didn't, some things that we thought we knew it was coming, but it actually wasn't what we thought. So let's just jump right into it. I mean, I started off my post with something that applies to all four of the new iPhones, which is the improved safety thanks to satellite, which is something that just seems so futuristic. And we've been speculating about it, but it looks like Apple has They have gotten it together. They have figured out how to do it. And so if you find yourself just completely off the grid, whether you are just driving between cities and there's no cell phone signal, or if you're hiking or anywhere in the woods or in the desert or wherever it is, if you just don't have a cell phone signal and you're in trouble, now you have some relief because your iPhone can do something that before now required you to have some like expensive Garmin gadget where you were paying a
satellite phone
subscription fee with a satellite phone. But now you can just use SOS, talk to the satellites and send a signal, and your iPhone will use your GPS position. Here's where you are, what's the nature of your problem, and it will get you help. So this is obviously something that we hope that we don't need to use very often, but it literally could be a lifesaver. Now it does require that you have a clear view of the sky to see the satellites. So for example, Apple had a interesting video in the beginning of the announcements where they're talking about how people's lives had been saved by Apple products. And the one that hit me the most was the guy who fell into a trash the truck, the garbage truck, and he was stuck inside the garbage truck. And thank God he could use his Apple Watch to get help. That's a horrible thing. I don't even want to think about it. It's so disgusting. But because he was inside the garbage truck, it's a good thing he had cell phone signal, because that would not work with the satellite because you wouldn't be able to see it. You got to be outside. But as long as you're not in a cave or something like that, this could be useful. And what I thought was nice is it's not just in this absolute emergency, I need to get 911 out here. You can also use it with the Find My feature. So if you just, I want my spouse or a family or friend member, I just want them to know where I am, even though I have no cell phone coverage, you can use the satellite feature with Find My so that people that you have given permission to track you, they can say, I may not know where Brett is because he's not in cell phone coverage, but the satellite found him in this location, 15 minutes ago. And so they'll have a general idea of where you are, which, maybe hopefully everything's going to be fine, but it's just nice that people know where you are. So I think this is really exciting. It's a cool feature. Apple said that they're going to pay for the service for the first 2 years. After that, there will be a charge, which they haven't released yet what that charge will be. And maybe it'll be included as part of Apple One subscription or something like that. But it's really neat stuff. And you know that within a year or two, we're going to hear stories of people whose lives were saved because of this feature.
Absolutely. I say quickly on that, I just thought I am all about incorporating this. Like you said, it sounds futuristic, but I'm like, do away with the towers if we possibly can. Now, we're not there yet, because I thought one thing quickly interesting I picked up on, it's the messages that can be sent to the satellites, right? These satellites that were put up decades ago can't handle even like the bare minimum text messages that we're so used to doing over cellular networks today. And so, they had to strip down some, even in the video, they talked about how it can just be a small message on there. But my hope is it's just going to keep getting better with what Apple can do. And I say, Apple, just launch your own satellites, right? Like, let's go all the way on that. But interesting stuff for sure.
Well, I saw in the news Elon Musk is talking about how he's also talking to Apple about this in the future. So who
Okay,
knows what the
good.
future may
Do
bring?
it.
Who knows? Another nice safety feature that they're going to have that again, all four of the new iPhones will have, as will the new Apple Watch too, is because of
Wow.
the
Yeah.
advanced accelerometer and other sensors. If it senses that you have been in a car crash, suddenly coming to a stop and everything that's associated with that, it will call for help, which is
Yeah.
great because otherwise, if you're in a car crash, you may not have easy access. First of all, you might be unconscious, or even if you're not, you may not have easy access to your phone. Maybe you would with your watch, and that's often what
Right.
helps people nowadays. But it's nice that your phone will be able to call 911 automatically, and you can stop it if it's a false positive. But
Right.
but this is another feature that I think it's great. Some cars actually, some high-end cars come with this feature, but it's great that everybody with an iPhone will have this feature.
This was one of the most exciting announcements and events that Apple had, but also to me one of the scariest. That video you were talking about, Jeff, they had a montage of people that were, like you said, that gentleman that was caught in the back of a trash truck. They had someone that used their watch to call emergency services after a plane crash, for crying out loud. Now they didn't show anything, but and then somebody
Another
was
one had a
had
bear. He
a
was out in the
bear
cabin in the
came
woods, and
into
there
the
was a bear
camp
in his
and they
cabin.
had to, I'm like, oh my goodness, I can't even imagine some of these scenarios, but it was masterful the way that Apple used it. It was just really cool. And then, I mean, talking about this car accident thing, they were showing like several crash dummies in a car. Like, how many vehicles did Apple crash over the course of like the last couple of years,
Hmm.
testing this out because it's the new gyrometer or gyroscope, whatever it is in there. But really, really cool stuff. And they said several times, similar to what you just said, Jeff, Apple's like, something that we hope you never have to use, but
Yeah,
we hope that you can feel a little safer now. Good stuff there.
exactly.
Just incredible things.
Of all the announcements this week, though, the ones that really jump out at me the most are the ones that are coming specifically to the Pro models. So, you need to
Uh-huh.
spend an extra $200
Oh
to get
yeah.
these phones, but you really get some nice things this year. And one of the coolest ones, I think, is this idea that they have that they're calling Dynamic Island, which is sort of an interesting name.
Incredible.
And what it is what used to be the notch at the top of the screen, they've made it a little bit smaller. So it's now more like a pill shaped. And that is the part that was rumored beforehand. But this is a perfect
Yes.
example of, we knew a little bit, but we didn't know, it was, not seeing the forest because of the trees. We didn't know the full story here. And now that
Uh-huh.
Apple's explained it, this is really, really neat. This thing, of course, you need to have something there because there's a front facing camera and there's a sensor. So to a certain degree, they have to cut out the screen. But what Apple is doing is they're taking that area and turning it into a notification section so that you can tap on it,
Yeah.
and you can bring it up,
Yeah.
or notifications can just pop up there. And so the it's called dynamic because it can get bigger and smaller to show you more information. You can have, if you're watching sports scores, you could have it up there. If you've got like a lift car coming, it'll tell you how many minutes away up there. But it's really multitasking for the iPhone. You're doing
Yeah.
what you're doing on the main part of the screen, and then you can have one or even two things at the very top of this area
Yeah.
here for the
Yeah.
dynamic island. So I think this is incredibly useful, and especially for power users that are doing lots of different things with their phone. This feature looks, first of all, it's beautifully executed. The
Incredible.
user interface is
Absolutely.
incredible, and it looks like it's going to be so useful. I cannot wait. This is really exciting. Came as a complete surprise to everybody.
I predict this will be the one thing that you will see people on both extremes, right, Jeff? There will be people like us that say, this is incredible. We never saw this coming. This is brilliant the way that Apple is implementing this. And there will be people on the other side of the spectrum being like, this is the craziest, silliest thing I've ever seen. First of all, just because they named it Dynamic Island, because this was a great story I found here from Fast Company where they're talking about, we had the notch. And by the way, quickly, just to back up quickly, there are 4 iPhone 14s, right? We have the iPhone 14, and then there is the iPhone 14 Plus,
Mhm.
which are basically like I guess, the entry
The
line
entry level, sure.
models, right? And then, like you mentioned, there is the iPhone 14 Pro and the Pro Max, which are
Mhm.
just the bigger size on this. The 2 iPhone 14 regulars are still going to have the notch, similar to what we have today on the iPhone 12 and the 13, right?
Yeah.
But this pill, or what Apple came up with as the Dynamic Island, which if I had just heard that on its own, Jeff, I would have been like, oh my goodness. But when you see the video that you embedded into your post today, you're like, oh my goodness, I must have that. But though that Dynamic Island is going to be available on the 14 Pro and the Pro Max.
Exactly, exactly. The thing that Apple announced that we figured was going to come was we knew there'd be some camera improvements,
Oh
and there
yeah.
are some camera improvements to just the entry level iPhone 14 too, more software based, a little bit hardware stuff. But for the really significant camera improvements, again, you're going to want the Pro, and that's always been the case that the Pro
Yes.
model has had the better cameras. This year, one of the things that they're doing is instead of the 12 megapixel camera, they actually have a 48 megapixel camera. Now, what you could
Crazy.
do is you could use it
Wow.
to make pictures, 4 times as large, but that's not what Apple's doing. What or
Right.
twice as large, depending upon how you count that. What Apple is doing is it's taking the 48 megapixel and treating it like it's a 12 megapixel camera, the same thing that we've had for years, but they're using
Yes.
4 pixels for every pixel to have that much more sensors to sense light and color and everything else. And so
Right.
a picture that looks the same size can do even better in low light. It can be even more precise. Apple was showing incredible examples of like zooming in and things look really, really detailed. And
Yes.
so this is exactly what you
Yes.
want your camera to do. You want it to work the same as always, but just give you better pictures. And because of that change, and because of a number of other ones that, different flashes and other things that have changed, it looks to me a dramatically better camera, better. The actual hardware lenses are better. So we'll have to
Yeah.
see when we try it out. But I suspect that especially, I mean, outside pictures are going to be fine with a lot of different cameras, but
Yeah.
we're not always outside. If you're inside, if you're at a wedding, if you're in someone's
Right.
house, if you're
Right.
in a restaurant and a bar, those are the ones where that can be more of a challenge. And it looks like the iPhone 14 Pro and Pro Max are going to do a nicer job with them.
And you even mentioned here, like, there's one thing for the actual hardware, the lenses that they use, but then the photonic engine,
Mhm.
which that just sounds like it deserves to be in Star Trek somewhere. But the photonic engine is like the software capabilities. And then quickly, you just also mentioned the action mode for videos. We already know
Mhm.
about image stabilization, but just some of the things that they were showing yesterday or Wednesday was just amazing what the action mode will be able to do for the video as well.
Yeah, if you're moving around quickly with your iPhone, if you don't have like an external gimbal to hold it steady, then you have that
Crazy.
shaking. And Apple has had different ways to account for that in the past,
Right.
but they have an
Right.
improved mode that you can get into. That'll actually work on the regular iPhone as well. Another nice change that's coming, and this is the one that we knew about, is the always on display. And again,
Yeah.
before this week, rather, you might have assumed that that was going to be the marquee feature of Apple's presentation
Uh-huh.
because this is
Yep.
such a big change to have a display on a phone that's always on. And instead, it was far less important, or at least far less significant than some of these other things. But that doesn't take away from the fact that it's going to be a nice change, that you'll be able
Wow.
to just be sitting at your desk and you can glance at your iPhone, much like with the brand
Yeah.
new Apple
Without
Watches that
having to
have the
tap
always
on it.
on,
Right.
and you can glance at it and you can see the time, you can see notifications, you can see stuff. So you can just do things more efficiently without having to pick it up and unlock it and get into the phone. And so it's just those
Crazy.
little bitty, quality of life improvements that I think are going to be nice in a lot of situations.
And then quickly, I know we'll come back to this in just a minute, but what the thing that I immediately thought of with the always on, because at first I'm like, I don't know if I need it to be always on, but with the improvements in the lock screen coming with iOS 16, that's going to be great. And then
Exactly.
the screen is even better and brighter
Brighter screen,
with
2000
14.
nits, all the other things. These are going to be wonderful, wonderful devices. And there's other little
And
things
it's,
too, like no SIM tray if you're in the United States. So that's
yeah.
one less way to have water get in there and stuff like that. So really cool stuff. I'm really, really looking forward to this year's
Well,
iPhone.
and just quickly, I'm going to stay on that eSIM because, I haven't really looked into this, but I will tell you, I've had a couple of people reach out to me just for general asking some questions, Jeff. And they want, instead of carrying two separate physical phones, they want to be able to carry one phone that could switch as like a business phone and a personal phone. Now, I'm not sure exactly how all this works, but I
No, you
do
can
know
absolutely do that. You can
that
do that
the
with the current
eSIM,
iPhone too. Yeah.
right, exactly. But I know the eSIM is just even going to make that even a little bit easier. I did have seen a couple of people already talking about how, it's more secure if you have a physical SIM. But I mean, to me, this is just the way it's going to go anyway with this electronic SIM on there, which is going to be good.
Yeah. Yeah. This is going to be great, great, great device.
New colors, my goodness. Oh, the one thing I don't know if most people would care about this, but you and I have talked about it before. Of those four new iPhone 14 phone models that are coming out, one of them is not going to be the iPhone 14 mini. There isn't going to be a
Yeah.
mini anymore. That was the one thing. Apple didn't announce this, but we just know that you
It's
and I
been
have
long
talked about it.
rumored. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. that they were going to drop that, and so you can either get like a regular size phone or a big phone, and that's just going to be your options on there. But great stuff. I know there's going to be so much more that are coming out of this, but thanks for writing this up, Jeff. This is really good on the things that we're covering here. So let's go from the iPhone then to the new Apple Watch. We knew that the Apple Watch Series 8 was probably going to be announced, and you and I had talked about some rumors that possibly there was going to be like a tough version.
Yeah.
Apple Watch Tough, and we got it. Not called Tough. It's called the Ultra. But let's talk about the Series 8 first.
Sure. The Series 8 is easy to talk about because it's just a nice little incremental increase from last year. If you already have a Series 7 from last year, you certainly don't need a Series 8. Right. But if you are ready to get a new Apple Watch, well, now you can take advantage of a couple more improvements. For example, it's got a temperature sensor on it that can be used if you're tracking your ovulation cycle, trying to get pregnant or something like that, or maybe trying to avoid getting pregnant. You can use that to track that. And it's got some other little bitty improvements on it, some sensors that are improved, the crash detection and stuff like that. But it's just a nice incremental, step up in the world. I don't think it's not gonna, no one's gonna get overly excited about it. But if you're ready for an upgrade, now the Series 8 is right there ready for you at the same price that it was there before. Right. Apple has also finally, thank goodness, gotten rid of the Series 3, which they were still selling for so many years. Thank goodness they don't have that one anymore. They made the SE a little bit better. So, there's some nice improvements that if you're just ready for a regular old Apple Watch, you're good. Nothing wrong. I don't, it's not very exciting, but we love the Apple Watch and we will continue to love them. The thing that's new. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was just going to ask, are you going to upgrade to Series 8? Because I still have the 5. Okay, you're not. Okay, so you don't think there was enough there from having the 7, like you got the 7th, and you're not going to go to 8 on there.
But I will tell you, a year ago, I did not plan to upgrade from a 6 to a 7. And the reason I did is because the 7 had the bigger screen, which the 8 also has as well. And although it's a very small increase, it will often mean like one more line of text for a message or an email. It was enough that I thought, plus the always on, I thought that, all of that together with the always on screen and the bigger screen, I thought that was a nice change, and I've been very happy with it. So, but again, it's none of it's unnecessary. It's just when you get to the point with your own watch, maybe the battery life is not as good as anymore, or you're ready for a new design or something like that. It's there for you. So.
Well, if you want a much bigger Apple Watch, well, okay, maybe I'll try to be fair. Not much bigger, but it is going to to be bigger and tougher. The Apple Watch Ultra.
This is interesting. This is not for me. But you know what? I'm curious who it's for, because when Apple advertises the Ultra, this is a super rugged, super tough iPhone that if you are going diving, if you are, climbing mountains, if you are running across the desert,
if you're running a marathon across the Sahara,
running marathon, you need extra battery life, you need extra toughness, you need all of the things that a slightly bigger screen. You just need that tougher one. This is there for you, and it's got some interesting new features, like an extra button on the side that you can use for
the action button.
The action button, which specific apps can take advantage of, which is nice because, for example, if you were scuba diving, you can't even touch the screen because in the water none of that's going to work. So you need to have one more button to be able to interact with things. So that's nice. It's also got a bigger speaker, so it can make more noise. In fact, if you're lost somewhere, you can actually emit this loud squeaking sound so people could find you. The dial on the side of it, I mean, it's got the same
a little bigger
one that we normally have, but it's bigger, it's more prominent. You might be in some of these more extreme sports, you might be wearing gloves, and so it's something that's more easily to spin the digital crown with gloves. So it's a tougher model, and that sounds really interesting. What I'm going to be curious about is how popular it is. I think about the fact that the most popular vehicle in the United States is not a car. It's actually the Ford F-100, I believe it is. It's the pickup truck, right?
The pickup truck, right?
Many people use that pickup truck to do construction jobs and everything else.
Right.
But you know what? I'm sure there are people that just like having a pickup truck. They use it to carry home stuff from Costco and stuff like that.
Exactly.
And so I'm going to be curious how many people maybe are not climbing Mount Everest, but they still just like the idea of this more advanced watch. Yeah. And it does have, would I enjoy having an extra button on my watch? Sure. Yeah. Would I enjoy having a larger screen? Yeah. Would I enjoy a bigger, louder speaker? Sure. Sounds good. All of the big marquee features, I'm like, I could probably use that, but I don't need something that's tough as nails. So I'm going to be really curious to see over the course of the year, is it just going to be those extreme sport enthusiasts that purchase this? or other people are going to buy it just because they like the idea of a tougher Apple Watch. I'm really
I had
interested to
the
find out.
I had the exact same thought, and only because I'm trying to like talk myself out of the fact that like I need to buy this. What a lot of people were talking about, Jeff, is that a market that I didn't even know too much about, probably because I don't need to know about this market, is Garmin, right? They
Mhm.
have very high end, ultra type, watches like this, right? And this is a market that Apple basically wanted to get in, obviously, right? That's what they wanted to go. And so they are competing with some of these very high end Garmin and some of these other high end markets there for these watches. So again, I didn't know about that market before, probably because I didn't need to know about that market, right? That's not going to be something that I need. But now that Apple has come out with something like this, I'm like, well, yeah, I need that. One day I'm going to walk across, the Sahara Desert barefoot, and I need to have a watch that can handle all of that for me. It's never going to happen, but boy, this looks so cool. Apple even sweetened the deal, Jeff, by not only did they have the watch, but they created specific, beautiful bands for mountain climbing. They have one for running a trail like a marathon, and they have one specifically for diving in the ocean. I
Mhm.
mean, they are just sweetening the pot here to be like, man, if you really want to do some skydiving, you can't really be a good diver, a scuba diver, unless you have the Apple Watch Ultra with the ocean band. I mean, that's
Mhm.
just me putting that in, but there are some really, really cool stuff in here. I mean, even little things like, to me, the night view that you could turn so everything turns red on the watch face. I thought that was really cool, and the way that they were going to be able to do it. There's some GPS additions. Some of that will come into the regular watches
Mhm.
as well. They call it backtrack, so you can find your way back. I mean, just some really interesting things here. That
Yeah, I mean,
is,
just to pause on that in a second, if you're walking
yeah,
around outside, and this is also in the Series 8, by the way, this is one of the unique features it has.
right,
You can
right,
use the compass that you can say, start tracking me
yes,
now, and then you start to
right,
walk around. And if you get lost, it can say, well, look, I've been tracking you. So you went, northeast east for this long. Now keep going that way. Okay, now I want you to take a right and go this way for a certain degree. And it could basically retrace your steps. It's sort of the digital version of
yeah,
leaving breadcrumbs for you to follow so that, when
exactly,
you don't have other markers, and again, you don't need the ultra version for that. Just the Series 8 will do it, although not the older
exactly.
ones like
That's
the
right.
Series 7.
That's right.
So that's what a cool feature that people are going to find that useful. I think that's really neat.
And just like you said, I mean, I might fall into one of those customers. Like I have no business owning one of these, but I want one so bad. It'll be interesting to see. At the very least, I have promised myself that I will get the Series 8 because, unlike you, I didn't upgrade to the
It's
Series
time.
7. So,
It's time.
well,
Yeah.
exactly. And demand. There's some really, really cool things coming in with that. Okay, the last thing we can focus on, which I may be even a little bit more excited about, Jeff, is the AirPods Pro, which have become, again, indispensable to my life, just like the iPhone is, just like the Apple Watch is. And in fact, Tim Cook and I thought Apple did a good job at the very beginning of this video and throughout the video saying, we have come to understand how essential these devices have become to your everyday life. I mean, they know this, right? They know that we don't leave home without the iPhone, the Apple Watch, and the AirPods Pro. And so I was hoping that they were going to have a new AirPods Pro, and they did. I'm not going to say that, now this one was probably maybe the smallest, kind of an incremental upgrade, but man, some of the stuff is really cool on this.
They really took everything that you love about the AirPods Pro and made it better. One of the things
Yeah,
people
that's a
love
good
is
way.
noise cancellation. That's obviously one of the big differentiating factors from the regular
Yes.
AirPods. And Apple said that it's a next level active noise cancellation. It's going to do an even better job of canceling
Uh-huh.
noise. You can also use it. I love transparency mode where
Yes.
it's the opposite of noise
Yes.
cancellation. I'm listening to my music and I'm also listening to the outside world, but there's a
Right.
new version
Let
of it
things in.
that for certain obnoxious noises in the outside world, like the example they gave yesterday was somebody doing the what's called the pile driving, or those sorts of
Oh yeah,
noises,
yeah.
or breaking up concrete and stuff like
Concrete.
that,
Yes,
concrete,
right.
those sorts of things. It dims those things while still allowing you to hear the world around you, and those are things that
Right.
just make it better with the faster chip can do. They've also done a nice job of improvements with the case. I mean, I like my current
Yeah.
AirPods Pro case, but the new one, first of all, you have another way to charge it. You can charge it
Right.
on an Apple Watch charger as well as a
I
Qi
know.
charger, which it just gives you
Interesting.
more flexibility. It also, you talked about this like a week ago or 2 weeks ago, and I thought you were saying that it was in the current AirPods, but you're going to have the ability with the brand new one that you can find it. If you've lost your AirPods Pro and
Yes.
they're in the case, you don't know where in the house they are, you can use the ultra wideband sensors to say, go left, go right, find it here. They even put a speaker on the case so
On the
it can
case,
beep, so
right?
you can find it more
Right.
easily. That's going to solve a problem that many people have talked about of, I lost my case and I can't find it. They have for people that find the current AirPods Pro just a little too big for
Yes.
their ear, they now have an extra small version of the little
The tips,
the tip that
the
you
ear
put on the edge of
tips,
it.
right?
And another thing that I really like about it is that I currently don't like that if I want to change the volume, which is something that I want to do often when I'm
Uh-huh.
listening to something, it's not easy to change the volume on the AirPods Pro. What you can do is if you're wearing an Apple
Yeah.
Watch, you can do it on the Apple Watch, but you have to
Right.
first make sure your Apple Watch is in the right mode to be
Right.
controlling what you're listening
Right.
to, and then you can use the digital crown. But what I like about the new AirPods Pro is you can put a finger on the
Yeah.
back of it, and then while you're touching the back of it, the same place that you would squeeze with the other finger, you just sort of go up and down, and you can make the volume louder or softer. I will use that feature literally every
Every
day.
day.
Every
Every
day.
day.
So this is like it's all the things you love about the AirPods Pro. Let's just make it better over here, better over here, better over here. And you add it up. And I mean, are any of them like mind blowing? I mean, my AirPods are not talking to satellites or anything like that, but they're
Yeah.
nice little improvements that make them that much more pleasant to use. So
Yeah. Oh yeah, I was the most excited about this. The fact that because I love using like I double click or I click and hold the AirPods as they're in my ear now. I double click to go and advance the track or whatever. And I'm like, anytime that I wanted to turn it up, I would either go to my Apple Watch or go to my phone and turn up the volume. But I love to see that some of this will be built in. And just quickly along the lines of what you were talking about with I love using the spatialized audio or spatial audio, which has been
mhm.
around for a while, but now I'm going to be interested to see how this incorporates this with the phone. They talked about personalized spatial audio, so you're going to have to be able to train these so that it can be spatial audio specifically for the shape of your own head and ears on there. So it'll be really interesting to see where that
That I
goes. But
believe is
I say,
actually,
yeah,
I think that's actually a feature that's coming to iOS 16. That might work with current AirPods too.
ooh,
I'm not
okay.
positive, but well, check me on that. I'll
Well,
check on that.
I'm gonna have to get these new ones. I mean, they have become so indispensable that I use them so often now that they just get a little grimy and dirty sometimes. Not too much information, but I just use them so much. Like even the battery, I can tell is not at the way that it was, and I mean, I can't be without them on this. So it's really really cool stuff on there.
Brett, it sounds like you might be buying everything that they announced this week, which is funny because
I've been
for those
saving up.
for those watching the video right now, you are currently outdoors, so you're in the great outdoors.
I
You
am.
might be off the grid, as far as I know. You might need to be talking to satellites. You might need to have this rug. You might be going to hike up a mountain as soon as we
It's
finish
gonna
talking.
happen.
I don't know what you're
Oh yeah,
doing. You might need
it's happening.
you're ready.
It's
You are
so
definitely
good.
ready.
I am. I am. Well, you mentioned iOS 16, so let's wrap this up real quickly. And I just thought it was great because I guess I hadn't even realized that it's coming very soon. And why don't we just let people know that iOS 16 is on the way? You wrote about this actually a couple of months ago
Yeah.
after WWDC, and I don't think a whole lot has changed, but we have been seeing a lot of these betas, both the developer beta and the public betas now that are out, and we expect this to happen very soon.
Monday.
Correct?
Yeah, that's my in the know tip is that the new iOS 16 is going to be here for your iPhone, not the iPad, but for the
Yay.
iPhone, it will be here on
Yeah.
Monday. And
Right.
because this is such a big update, this is the one that maybe you might want to wait until Tuesday
Uh-huh.
or Wednesday. Just make sure that everybody else is okay with the upgrade. But I will tell you that the comments that I've heard of the public beta have been so positive that
Yes.
I'm definitely going to go ahead and upgrade right ahead on Monday. And
Me too.
why do you
Let
want
us
to
do it
upgrade?
for you, though.
Fine too. But just to remind you, what do you want to get? Some of the nice features are going to include the improvements to the Messages app that you can edit or delete a message after you've sent it. The personalized lock screen, which we've talked about, and of course, if you have a new iPhone, it'll always be on for the Pro model at least.
Woohoo.
But you can put all that interesting information on the lock screen. You've got improvements to Apple Maps with multiple stops. The Home app has a whole new look. The Siri dictation that you can talk and type at the same time. Now that's one that I'm more looking forward to on the iPad than the iPhone, but
Agreed.
still be useful. The Health app, if you use the Health app, it'll manage your medications. I mean, there's all of these different improvements. iOS 16 is going to be a big step forward, and it's not going to dramatically, except for the lock screen, which will be a dramatic different. It's not like it's going to change the use of the iPhone day to day so much. So I see it as nothing but positive. It's brand new features, cool stuff, and we're going to all get it for free next week. Pretty cool.
And like you said, I always reiterate to folks, if this was like 15.5 or something like that, I would
Hmm.
say no worry, you go ahead and do it. But with iOS 16, I know there are some people that are a little reserved. They're not quite as nerdy and excited about it as you and I might be, Jeff. And that's fine. We'll definitely be talking about this next week because I know that both of us will be up there. I've been waiting. I've been even, almost salivating at the public betas, but I just haven't pulled the trigger on that yet. But by next week, we'll definitely be talking about this. But hey, all of you listening, you can just hold off for a little bit if you're not quite as comfortable, because there usually are a few little bugs and things that do need to get worked out, or let us tell you maybe the little speed bumps. But after a couple of weeks or so, a lot of that gets ironed out. It's
Yeah,
certainly after
I'm
about a
sure there'll be
month,
a
and no problem.
16.01 and a 16.1 and
Right,
all that sort
exactly.
of stuff. But regardless, the future is here. Whether it's the new hardware or the new software, it's an exciting time to be using Apple mobile products. That's definitely for sure.
Absolutely. And we'll talk about it next week. So thanks, Jeff, for joining me just quickly. I know this is brief, but we just wanted to cover the exciting announcements from last week. And I know that next week we'll have even more to say about that. So thanks for joining us, everyone. And we'll talk to you next week, Jeff.
Thanks, Brett. Bye bye, everybody.